Shabbat Shalom, everyone. And Shabbat Shalom to those of you who are joining us on YouTube and templeshalom.com as well. We welcome all of you. We turn in our Siddur to page 128 and 129. We begin welcoming Shabbat with a few Shabbat songs to get us in the mood to begin our service. On page 128. Hine ma tov ma na'im shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov ma na'im shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov shevet achim gam yachad. shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov u'ma na'im shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov u'ma na'im shevet achim gam yachad. On page 129, not quite at the bottom of the page, but near the bottom of the page, we come to a song. Its words are Ki Eshmer Shabbat, because I watch over Shabbat. El Yishmerini, God will watch over me. Shabbat is a sign between me and God forever. Eshmer Shabbat, El Yishmerini. Ki Eshmer Shabbat, El Yishmerini. Oti le'ol me'ad, Beino uveini. Oti le'ol me'ad, Beino uveini. Ki eshmer Shabbat, El Yishmerini. Ki eshmer Shabbat, El Yishmerini. Oti le'ol me'ad, Beino uveini. Oti le'ol me'ad, Beino uveini. If you turn back in your Siddur to page 120, you'll find the blessings for lighting our Shabbat candles. For those of you who are joining us at home online, if you have your candles ready and you haven't lit them yet, now's a great time to join with us as we light ours here in the sanctuary. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat. Page 130. We come to our Psalms of Kabalat Shabbat as we say goodbye to the busy week and say hello to the peace of Shabbat. Lechu neranina, lechu neranina, lechu neranina l'Adonai. Lechu neranina, lechu neranina, lechu neranina l'Adonai. Naria, naria, l'tzur yishenu, nekadma fana b'toda. Naria, naria, l'tzur yishenu, bizmirot naria lo. Lechu neranina, lechu neranina, lechu neranina l'Adonai. Lechu neranina, lechu neranina, lechu neranina l'Adonai. Psalm 96 is on page 131. In the bottom paragraph of that page, we'll sing the words, Yismechu hashamayim, the heavens will be glad. V'tagel haaretz, and the land will rejoice. Yiram hayam, and also the sea. Umelo, and all that fills them. So all the animals that fly, all the animals that swim, and all the animals that, well, walk or squirm, and whatever else they do upon the earth, will join in singing, giving thanks for God's creation. Yismechu hashamayim, Yismechu hashamayim, Yismechu hashamayim, v'tagel haaretz. Yismechu hashamayim, Yismechu hashamayim, Yismechu hashamayim, v'tagel haaretz. Yiram hayam, Yiram hayam, Yiram hayam, umelo. Yiram hayam, Yiram hayam, Yiram hayam, umelo. Yismechu hashamayim, Yismechu hashamayim, Yismechu hashamayim, v'tagel haaretz. You know, there's always the question of, can you clap your hands in the synagogue on Shabbat? And the Talmud says, no. The Talmud says, no, you can't. How many of you were surprised that that was the answer? A few people were surprised by that. The Talmud says, no, we should not clap our hands in the synagogue on Shabbat because clapping is a joyful thing, and we should all be sad that the temple in Jerusalem was destroyed and it doesn't exist anymore. Sometime 1,000-ish or so years after the Talmud was codified, some of the rabbis of the Kabbalistic world started asking the question, the temple's been destroyed for 1,500 years, and we have joyful melodies for prayer. Are we supposed to sing the joyful melodies in a sad way? And if the answer to that is yes, how exactly do you sing joyful melodies in a sad way? We can't figure out how to do that. So we are going to disagree with the rabbis of the Talmud and say, no, it's been a long time since the temple was destroyed. We have joyful melodies that have been written, and we don't want to sing the joyful melodies in a sad way because, first of all, we don't even know what that means because it doesn't make any sense. But second of all, it's Shabbat. We should be joyful at Shabbat whether there's a temple or there's not a temple. And then in 1948, more modern rabbis said, well, now there is dominion over Jerusalem and over Israel. The thing was that the Jews are no longer in charge of Jerusalem. Well, after 1948, there's a state of Israel, and we are in charge of Jerusalem. And therefore, we can be joyful that we're in charge of Jerusalem. And some people said, well, Jerusalem was divided after 1948. We could say, okay, fine. But after 1967, it wasn't divided anymore. So we can be joyful with our prayers. And if we're joyful with our prayers, we can clap a little bit and it all works out great. We continue singing joyfully as we're going to make our way to page 132, 4 lines up from the bottom of the page. Or Zarua La Tzaddik. Righteous people get some light. Light is planted for us. There's a beautiful idea about Or Zarua. The verb Zarua means to sow. But not to sow like sowing clothing, but sowing seeds. And so if we are righteous, light will be sown for us, which means that every time we're righteous, we don't just get a little bit of light, but we get the seeds of light. And those seeds grow, and we water them by doing more righteous things. And so every time we engage in righteousness, the seeds are sown and the seeds are watered, and we bring light into the world. Or Zarua La Tzaddik Ul Yishrei Lev Simcha. Or Zarua La Tzaddik Ul Yishrei Lev Simcha. Or Zarua La Tzaddik Ul Yishrei Lev Simcha. Ul Yishrei Lev Simcha. Or Zarua La Tzaddik Ul Yishrei Lev Simcha. Ul Yishrei Lev Simcha. Lai 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 lai. Or Zarua La Tzaddik Ul Yishrei Lev Simcha. Or Zarua La Tzaddik Ul Yishrei Lev Simcha. Page 135. We sing praises standing at God's holy mountain as we, like our ancestors, stood to receive the law from God. Some who say we were there, we received the 10 Commandments. Some who were there say we received in that moment the entirety of the Torah, which leads to an interesting time-traveling paradox. Because if we receive the entire Torah at Mount Sinai, then we received all the story of the wandering in the desert for 40 years and what would happen at the end of the 40 years, which we read about in this week's Torah portion. It's the very, very, very end of the 40 years. And we would have known 40 years in advance. And someone might have said, Moses, I read the book you brought down the mountain. We're going to have some issues. We need to talk about this so maybe we don't have to spend 40 years in the desert. So did they receive just the 10 Commandments? Did they receive an introductory work of the Torah? Did they receive the entire Torah at that moment? One of those answers is probably right. And maybe all of those answers are right as well. And so we stand at the mountain, and we sit at the mountain, as we say, and then we bow down at the mountain in the second line of those last three lines. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu, the last three lines of Psalm 99. We exalt Adonai our God, v'hishtachavu lahar kodsho, and we bow down at that holy mountain, whatever it was that we were receiving that day. Ki kadosh Adonai, because God is holy, and we try to make ourselves holy as well. The bottom of the Hebrew on page 135. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu v'hishtachavu lehar kodsho. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu v'hishtachavu lehar kodsho. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romemu. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romemu. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu v'hishtachavu lehar kodsho. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu v'hishtachavu lehar kodsho. Page 136 and 137 from Psalm 29, giving praise for God's creation. Let's read together in the English, a Psalm of David. Ascribe to Adonai, O divine beings. Ascribe to Adonai glory and strength. Ascribe to Adonai the glory of God's name. Bow down to Adonai, majestic in holiness. The voice of Adonai is over the waters. The voice of glory thunders, Adonai, over the mighty waters. The voice of Adonai is power. The voice of Adonai is majesty. The voice of Adonai breaks cedars. Adonai shatters the cedars of Lebanon. God makes Lebanon skip like a calf, Sirion like a young wild ox. The voice of Adonai kindles flames of fire. The voice of Adonai convulses the wilderness. Adonai convulses the wilderness of Kadesh. The voice of Adonai causes hinds to calf and strips forest bare. While in God's temple all say glory. Adonai sat enthroned at the flood. Adonai sits enthroned, sovereign forever. May Adonai grant strength to God's people. May Adonai bestow on God's people well-being. We sing those last two lines. Adonai oz le'amo yitain, Adonai yivarech et amo v'shalom. Lai 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 lai. Lai 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 lai. Lai 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 lai. Lai 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 lai lai. Lai 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 lai. Adonai oz le'amo yitain yitain. Adonai yivarech et amo v'shalom. Adonai oz le'amo yitain yitain. Adonai yivarech et amo v'shalom. Lai 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 lai. Lai 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 lai. Lai 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 lai. Lai 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 lai. Page 138 and 139. We come to Lecha Dodi as we welcome in the image of the Shabbat bride, leaving behind the week and bringing in a new day of Shabbat. We will sing verses 1 and 2 on page 138, verses 5 and 9 on page 139. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nikabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nikabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nikabela. Adodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nikabela. Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad, Hishmi'anu el hamiuchad. Adonai echad u'shemo echad, L'shem u'tiferet v'letchila. Lecha Dodi, Lecha Dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nikabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nikabela. Likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelcha, Ki mekor habracha, Merosh mikedem nesucha, Sof ma'aseh b'machshavat chila. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nikabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nikabela. Hit'oreri, ki ba'orech שיר דברי, כבוד אדוני עלייך נגלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקרבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקרבלה. We rise as we face the doors, we greet the image and welcome the Shabbat bride. Boi v'shalom ateret bala, gam b'simcha uvtzola, toch emunei am segula, boi chala, boi chala. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקרבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקרבלה. Before you're seated, we welcomed in Shabbat. We should welcome in each other. Turn to your neighbors, before, in front of you, behind you, across the aisle from you, and we wish all of you Shabbat Shalom. And for those of you there with us on templeshalom.com or on our Temple Shalom YouTube page, Shabbat Shalom to all of you. We're happy to see all of you with us this evening as well. As we come back to our Siddur and we find our seats on page 140 is Psalm 92. In the Mishnah we learn that the Levites would sing this psalm as they prepared for the ancient sacrifices on Shabbat. And in the middle of the psalm, the indented part of the psalm, we see Tzadik Katamar Yifrach. Tzadik, we had that word already in another psalm, righteous. Ketamar, tamar is a date palm, and Yifrach is to sprout. So if we are righteous, not only will we have light, as we saw in the previous psalms, but we will also sprout like a date palm. Date palms grow much better in the sun. That's why today, all the date palm fields in Israel are down in the Arava and in the Negev, because they get lots of sun there. And they grow tall and they grow strong and they have very, very deep roots. So if we are righteous people, not only will light be sown for us, but that light will have deep roots in the soil and it will have us grow strong and protected. Tzadika tamar Yifrach ke'eres balvanon yizgei shitulim beveit Adonai bechatzrot Eloheinu yafrihu od yenuvu b'seva dishenim vera'ananim yehiyu lehagi ki yashar Adonai tzuri velo avlatabo. When the Kabbalists were putting together the Siddur, or their section, this section of the Siddur, the Kabalat Shabbat, they said if we're going to say Psalm 92, we have to say Psalm 93 also. Why? Well, they said Psalm 92 is about Shabbat, And Psalm 93 talks about the completion of creation. And those two concepts, of course, pair up very nicely. So let's read together from Psalm 93 on page 141. We'll read together in the English of the psalm at the bottom of the page. Adonai is sovereign. God is robed in grandeur. Adonai is robed. God is girded with strength. The world stands firm. It cannot be shaken. Your throne stands firm from of old. From eternity you have existed. The ocean sounds, Adonai. The ocean sounds its thunder. The ocean sounds its pounding. Above the thunder of the mighty waters, more majestic than the breakers of the sea is Adonai, majestic on high. Your decrees are indeed enduring. Holiness befits your house, Adonai, for all times. We turn to 144. As we move from Kabalat Shabbat into our Mariv service, we separate those with Chatzi Kaddish. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, Yalmad yivrach Yerutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon uv'yomechon, uv'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael, ba'agala, uv'izman kariv, v'yimeru, amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevorach, Olam ame amaya, Yitbarach, Yitbarach, Vishtabach, Vitpa'ar, Vitramah, Vitnaseh, Vitadar, Vitale, Vitalal, Shemei Dukudesha, Barichu, Le'ela, Min Kol Berchata, V'shihirata, Tushbechata, V'nechemata, Dahamihiram, Be'alma, V'imeru, Amen. Page 146, we rise as we call ourselves to prayer with the words of Baruch Hu. Lai 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 lai. Baruch Hu et Adonai Hamevorach. Baruch Adonai Hamevorach, Hamevorach Le'olam va'ed. Hamevorach, Hamevorach Le'olam va'ed. Baruch Adonai Barach Le'olam va'ed. We can be seated. We give thanks for creation. Praised are you, Adonai, our God, ruler of the universe, who with your words brings on the evening, opening the gates of the heavens so that we might move day from night and night to day, that we might move the seasons, the months, and the stars and all the heavenly bodies might arrange themselves according to your patterns that you have established. We sing the words and the sounds of creation on page 148. Lai, 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 lai. Lai, 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 lai. Lai, 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 lai. Lai, 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 lai. Lai, 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 lai. Lai, 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 lai. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, Asher bidvaro ma'ariv aravim, V'chochma poteach sha'arim, U'vitfuna mishane itim, U'machalif et hazmanim, U'misader et ha'kochavim, B'mishmerotehem barakia kirtzono. Lai, 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 lai. Lai, 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 lai. Lai, 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 lai. Lai, 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 lai. Lai, 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 lai. Lai, lai, lai. Lai, 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 lai. Bore yom velayla gole or mipnei choshech v'choshech mipnei or uma'avir yom umevi layla umavdil ben yom uven layla Adonai tzivaot shemo Lai, 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 lai. Lai, 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 lai. 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 Lai, 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 lai. El chai v'kayam tamid yimloch aleinu le'olam va'ed Baruch atah Adonai Ha'ma'ari Aravim Lai, 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 lai. Lai, 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 lai. Lai, 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 lai. Lai, 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 lai. Lai, 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 lai. Lai, 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 lai. Ever-living God, may you reign continually over us into eternity. Blessed are you, Adonai, who brings on the evening. O ever-loving God, you give to your people Israel these words with love, these laws and these statutes you have taught to us. And we think of them when we lie down and when we rise up. They are the length of our days. They are the pathway for our life. So keep us close to those words. It's what we pray when we say these words of Ahavat Olam, prayer giving thanks for Torah, on page 150. Ahavat Olam, Beit Yisrael, Amcha Ahavta, Amcha Ahavta. Torah u'mitzvot, chukim u'mishpatim, otanu limadita, otanu limadita. Al kein Adonai Eloheinu b'shochvenu, kumenu nasiach b'chukecha. ונשמח בדברי תורתך ובמצוותיך לעולם ועד כי הם חיינו ואורך ימינו ובהם נהגי יומם ולילה נהגי יומם ולילה ואהבתך אל תסיר ממנו לעולמים. ברוך אתה אדוני אוהב עמו ישראל, אוהב עמו ישראל. Wisdom and wonder, passion and instruction, story and symbol, all these things your Torah gives to us. And the more we devote ourselves to it, the more it grows and gives. What could be a truer token of your abiding love than this holiest of your works and the living language that gives it form? Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael. Blessed are you, O God, who loves your people, Israel. We continue with Shema. page 152 and 153. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad Baruch Shem Kivod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha V'chol levavcha v'chol nafshecha uv'chol meodecha Ve'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom alevavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dabarta bam v'shivtecha b'veitecha uv'lechtecha v'derech uv'shochvecha uv'kumecha uv'kshartam le'ot al yadecha v'hayu letotafot beinenecha uchtavtam al mezuzot beitecha uv'yisharecha leman tizkeruhu v'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'yitem kedoshim le'elohechem ani Adonai Elohechem asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim liot lachem le'elohim ani Adonai Elohechem Adonai Elohechem emet. We read together page 155. Love your God with every heartbeat, with every breath, with every conscious act. Keep in mind the words I command you today. Teach them to your children. Talk about them at work. Whether you are tired or you are rested, let them guide the work of your hands. Keep them in the forefront of your vision. Do not leave them at the doorway of your house or outside your gate. They are reminders to do all of my mitzvot, so that you can be holy for God. I am Adonai, your God. I led you out of Egypt to become your God. I am Adonai, your God. We read together at the top of page 157 these words of Geulah, these words of redemption. Standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before ever we stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go, it is eternally Egypt, that there is a better place, a promised land, that the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness, that there is no way to get here to there except by joining hands, marching together. And as our ancient ancestors sang, we sing those same words, page 158. Who is like you, O God, among the deities that are worshipped among humanity? Who is like you, amazing in your holiness and in all of the things that you have made, that you have created are wonderful. Lai 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 lai. Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha ne'edar b'kodesh, nora tehilot osefele, nora tehilot osefele. Malachutecha ra'u vanecha, ukeyam libni Moshe u'Miriam, ze Elianu ve'amru, ze Elianu ve'amru, Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed. Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed. Yai lai 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 lai. Yai lai 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 lai. Yai lai 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 lai. Yai lai lai lai. Yai lai 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 lai. Thus it is said, Adonai redeemed Jacob from a hand stronger than his own. Praised are you, Adonai, for redeeming Israel. Baruch atah Adonai. Ga'al Yisrael. page 160. Lie us down, Adonai our God, in peace, and cause us to rise again tomorrow to life, and spread over us a shelter of your peace. Praise to you, Adonai, the one who spreads a shelter of peace over us, over Israel, and over all of Jerusalem. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom. The third line of the prayer. Ufros aleinu sukat shlomecha. The last three lines. Baruch atah Adonai haporei sukat shalom aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael ve'al Yerushalayim. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom. And the children of Israel will watch over and guard the Shabbat. For the Shabbat will be a sign forever between me and the people of Israel, God said. Because in 6 days, God created the heavens and the earth. And on the seventh day, Shavat vayinafash, God ceased from all the work. Went through the process of refreshing of the soul, as we do as well as we sing these words of the Shamru at the top of page 162. Vishameru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, la'asot et ha-Shabbat lidorotam, berit olam b'ni uvein b'nei Yisrael oti le'olam. Ki sheshet yamim asa Adonai et hashamayim ve'et haaretz uviyom hashvi'i Shabbat Shabbat vayinafash Shabbat Shabbat vayinafash v'shameru Shabbat Shabbat vayinafash v'shameru Shabbat Shabbat vayinafash. Praise to you, Adonai, guardian of Israel, who shall put us a shelter of peace over us, who brings Shabbat to us and brings us now to this moment of being face to face with you as we come to page 164, as we'll rise and join together in the Amidah. Adonai sifatai tiftach ufi agid tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanorah, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'konei Hakol, V'zocher Chaste Avot v'Imahot, Umevi Geula Livnei v'Nehem, Leman Shemo Be'ahava, Melech Ozer Moshiach Umagin. Baruch Atah Adonai, Magin Avraham Vezrat Sarah, Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai, Mechaye HaKol Atah Rav Lehoshia, Morid Hatal, Mechalkel Chayim Bechesed, Mechaye HaKol Berachamim Rabim, Somech Noflim Verofeh Cholim, Umatir Asurim, Umekayem Emunato, Vishenei Afar, Michamocha Baal Givurot, Umido Melach, Melech Meimit, Umechaye, Umatzmiach Yeshua, V'ne'eman Atah Lachayot HaKol, Baruch Atah Adonai, Mechaye HaKol, Atah Kadosh, V'shimcha Kadosh, U'kedoshim b'chol yom Yahallelu Chasela, Baruch Atah Adonai, Ha'el HaKadosh. We continue silently through 180 and 181, the even numbered pages with the traditional prayers, the odd numbered pages with the poetic renditions of the themes. When you finish with your personal Amidah, please be seated. Page 174 is the Avodah prayer. Soon after the destruction of the temple, this prayer was written to be a prayer to say we want to return into the inner sanctums of the temple to engage in not idol worship, but in sacrifice worship. And in modern times, it's been rewritten to be a prayer asking God to pay attention to our prayers and the depth of our prayers. Ritzei Adonai Eloheinu ve'amecha Yisrael u'tefilatam be'ahava tikabel u'tehi l'ratzon Tamid avodat Yisrael Yisrael amecha El karov lechol korav Pnei el avodecha v'chaneinu Shefuch ruchecha Aleinu v'techezi eininu b'shuvecha l'tzion mirachamim Baruch atah Adonai HaMachazir Shechinato L'Tzion L'Tzion L'Tzion. On page 371, we turn our thoughts to those who are in need of healing, healing of body and healing of soul and healing of mind. We ask for God to bring refuah shlema, complete healing, to Carrie Susser, Brian Zabel, Rovain ben Sipora, Moshe ben Avraham, Avram ben Meir, Judy Bauman, Avram ben Udul, Ellen McIntosh, John Redmond Palmer, William Redmond Palmer, Susan Perry, Paltiela Bat Mordechai Vavasha, Amy Sutton, Perry Bach, Gladys Korn, Harriet Neal, Rachel Nechama Bat Bracha, Grace Potter, John Sheck, Faye Green, Steve Listener, Howard Chook, Joel Weiss, Linda Kraft, Cheryl Miller, and Charney Oppenheim. Are there any other names that anybody would like to include? Judy, go ahead. Thank you. Any others on this side of the room, names for healing? On this side of the room? Thank you. Thank you. Any others on this side of the room? For those of you at home, if you have names you'd like to include, you can either type them in the chat feature on your platform, or you can say them out loud where you are. As we now join together in the words of Misha Berach, in the middle of page 371. Misha Berach Avoteinu Mikor HaBracha Leimoteinu. May the source of strength who blessed the ones before us help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Misheberach imoteinu mikor habracha leavoteinu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema. the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. Well, tonight is the 5th Friday night of the month of July. And if you weren't counting, it's still the 5th Friday night of the month of July. And we're bringing back something that we started years ago before COVID, and it kind of disappeared during COVID, and it's back now, which is whenever there's a 5th Friday night of the month, it's Ask the Rabbi night. Instead of a sermon that I prepare, you prepare the sermon by asking me questions. By the way, rumor has it, well, it doesn't have it yet, but I'm starting the rumor right now. The rumor I'm starting right now is that starting in a couple of months, we might actually have a Saturday morning version of Ask the Rabbi coming up as well. We've never done it on a Saturday morning, but in a couple of months, the rumor is that I'm starting today, right now. The rumor is the rabbi might start doing it. I'll have to ask him and find out, but that's the rumor I'm starting. It's on videotape, so it's a solid rumor. There we go. So, we're going to take a little while. You get to ask the questions of things you've always wanted to know about, anything that has to do with Judaism, the prayer book, Jews, Israel, the world, all of life. I will tell you the answers, and if I don't know the answer, I will make up something that sounds really great, and then I'll go look up the answer and call you with the actual answer once I look it up. Carolyn's got the first one. Yeah. Let's. If somebody wants to go flip those couple of switches over there, we can just. Yeah. It's for those of you who are online. It's like 32 below zero in the synagogue, in sanctuary right now. We've had the swamp cooler on, and yeah. So, all right. Was that your only question, Carolyn, for right now? That was it? Okay, excellent. Then we're going to go all the way to the back. Oh, we'll do Judy first. All right, Judy, you're first. Okay.
Traditionally, the bar mitzvah, or now the bat mitzvah also, is the time at which someone becomes a Jewish adult. So, we have people who convert, and I think that's great. No criticism. And we have people like me of the generation who grew up before there were bat mitzvahs.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So for those online, just to repeat the ideas, we have people who convert to Judaism who were not Jewish when they were 13. We have women of the generation before there was bat mitzvah. We'll talk about that in a second. Women of the generation, I'm going to rephrase a little bit. Women of the generation before bat mitzvah was widespread. Okay? And what's the legality of them being called up to the Torah because they haven't had a bat mitzvah ceremony? Is that basically the idea there? So, bar mitzvah and bat mitzvah are fairly new ideas in Judaism. The first bat mitzvah was a woman by the name of Judith Kaplan, who then became Judith Kaplan Eisenstein when she married Rabbi Eisenstein. But she was Rabbi Kaplan, Rabbi Mordechai Kaplan's daughter. She was ordained at the Center for Progressive Judaism on the I think it's the Upper West Side, but I might be messing my New York up. If it's not the Upper West Side, it's it's on the upper side, east or west, whichever one it was. I think it's the west side, okay? And her bat mitzvah, we know exactly when it was, and I actually got to give a sermon and talk about her bat mitzvah in Israel because I was in Israel visiting the group where my daughter was doing her semester abroad the weekend that was the 100th anniversary of Judith Kaplan Eisenstein's bat mitzvah in New York. So this March, just a few months ago, was the 100th anniversary of the first ever bat mitzvah. The first bar mitzvah, anybody want to take a guess? Somebody guessed 1,500 years ago.
1,500 years.
You're off by 1,000. I just tricked you into that answer. What can I say? The first bar mitzvah that we know of was about 500 years ago, we think. We think it was in Germany or maybe Poland or maybe Germany, depending upon which week of the month it was when that border kept going back and forth between what that is. But it was somewhere in like kind of that central Germany, Poland area about 500 years ago. So we've been calling up people to the Torah longer than 100 years ago or 500 years ago. So the Talmud talks about the idea of being of the age of majority when you count in the congregation. And when is that moment? It's for boys only because it was the time of the Talmud, right? And so the Talmud tells us, you see, how many under 18-year-olds do I have that might giggle now? A couple. All right. Well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 22. 22 people who might giggle. The Talmud tells us that you reach the age of majority when you have 3 pubic hairs. I don't know why they didn't say 2 or 4. I'm not sure, but that's what it is. And they decided that for a typical young man, that happens around the age of 13. Hence, the age is 13. There we go. That's where the 13 comes from, okay? So that young man now counts in the minyan. When we started counting women in the minyan, which is debatable about when that is, because we know of Jewish communities that counted women in the minyan hundreds and hundreds of years ago. And then we also know of modern Judaism counting women in the minyan. Well, it depends on where you look, but 50 years ago, 80 years ago, 100 years ago, in some places last week. That's actually, it sounds like I'm telling a joke, but that's actually true. Because in the conservative movement, there are still some congregations that are kind of in that flux. I worked for a congregation in Los Angeles. I ran their youth programs and was a religious school teacher. And this woman would go to, they had a daily minyan every day, and they would not count her in the minyan. Okay? The old men who would come to the minyan, they would count the minyan, and they would not count this woman in the minyan. I thought that was really weird because she was the rabbi. So that's really true. No, that's really true. She was the rabbi of the congregation, not the assistant rabbi. She was the rabbi of the congregation, and they didn't count her in the minyan. But kind of as different movements have evolved, different things have happened. So the idea of having a bar mitzvah or bat mitzvah to be called up to the Torah doesn't matter, frankly. What matters is that you are the age of majority. Here are the 3 requirements to become a bar mitzvah. Ready? 1, you must be Jewish. Makes sense, right? Unless you read a Time magazine article from about 2 decades ago when they had a front page article about a faux mitzvah. I want to have a party like my Jewish friends. I just don't want to have a service, but I want to have the party. Yeah, it was a thing for a while, about 20 years ago. But requirements to become bar mitzvah. You must be Jewish. You must be a boy because it's bar mitzvah. And you must turn 13 because that's the age. If you meet those 3 requirements, you are bar mitzvah. To become a bat mitzvah, 3 requirements. You must be Jewish. You must be a girl because bat means daughter of. And you must turn 13, in some communities 12, and then you are bat mitzvah. That's it. There are no other requirements. You don't have to have a ceremony. So why do we have this bar mitzvah, bat mitzvah ceremony? What's the importance of this? The idea is that this young person who's now going to be counted in the minyan is going to stand up in front of the congregation and says, I realize I've reached a certain point in my life in the Jewish community, and I want to show all of you people in the congregation that I think it means something to me. So I'm going to show you it means something to me by reading a little Torah or Haftarah, leading some prayers, giving a drash, doing a little teaching. I already became a bat mitzvah when I turned 13. So like this ceremony doesn't do anything about making me a bat mitzvah or a bar mitzvah, but this ceremony says, today I am publicly announcing in front of all of you that I think this is an important moment. So anybody who is Jewish and over the age of 13, you're bar mitzvah or bat mitzvah. That's all there is to it. And so you count in the minyan, and anyone who counts in the minyan can be called up for an aliyah to the Torah, except for 1 day of the year when we allow children under the age of 13 to be called for an aliyah to the Torah. Anybody know that day? Purim, good guess. It's wrong. I heard Yom Kippur. That's also a good guess, but not correct. Although you're in the better time of year than Purim. Purim's the wrong season. Yom Kippur. Simchat Torah. That's it. When we read the end of the Torah and the beginning of the Torah, it's a tradition to call up children as well. to have an aliyah of the Torah on that day to celebrate finishing reading the Torah and starting the Torah. So a little bit about bar mitzvah and bat mitzvah, and do you have to have a ceremony in order to be kosher enough to be called up to the Torah? And the answer is you're already a bat mitzvah. So mazel tov. There we go. Okay. Where's the reception? We'll get that. All right, we had a question all the way in the back. You were raising your hand before. Yes? No? Yeah?
So I have a question. It's about covering your eyes for Shema. The community I grew up in did not do that. First time I had observed anywhere was in Temple Shalom, but it's not always. So can I get the drush on that, please, Rabbi?
So the question was about covering our eyes for Shema. You grew up in a congregation, people didn't do that. You came here, people do that, but they don't seem to do it all the time. And the answer is because traditionally you are supposed to cover and or not cover your eyes for Shema. So what does that mean? That means that in the Jewish world, there are a variety of traditions of different things that we do for different prayers. And in some communities that do a particular thing, other communities might not. The idea of covering our eyes for Shema is this. What's the first word in Shema? Shema, which means it means to hear, it means to heed, it means to obey. It means all three of those things. It's used differently in different parts of the Tanakh. And so, if I'm going to really carefully listen, one way I can do that is to turn off at least one of my other senses, right? So if I'm going to really hear, if I turn off my sight, I have one less sense that's being active. And so I can add my concentration into saying that prayer. Now, in some communities, they say with closing your eyes isn't good enough. Because you need to actually physically feel the Shema. Physically feel the Shema? How do you physically feel the Shema? Shema starts with the letter Shin. And if I place the Shin on my forehead, as I put finger marks on my glasses, as I place the Shin on my forehead and close my eyes behind it, I'm physically sensing the Shema. And so that's another custom that comes along. There's another custom that says this, that, first of all, there's a question. Do you have to say the Shema in Hebrew? You don't. You can go look it up later. It's Mishnah Sota, chapter 7, Mishnah 2. You can go look it up later, but that's where it is. And it tells you that you can say the Shema in any language. But then the Rambam, Maimonides, around not quite 1,000 years ago, said that if you're going to say the Shema in another language, because you don't know Hebrew, because you should understand the words of the Shema, you need to say it with a translation that an expert translator gave to you so that you get the essence of the Shema. Which leads some rabbis, like me, to say, well, the translation in this book says, like, hear, O Israel, right? Or something like that. But it doesn't mean hear. It means hear and heed and obey. It means all three of those things. So you have to pay attention to all three of those ideas if you're going to say them in English to understand what the prayer really means. So the idea of covering our eyes, which we do at various points, there are different traditions of moving, and the whole idea of covering our eyes, taking 3 steps back, taking 3 steps forward, bowing, shuchling, right? In Yiddish, we call this shuchling, right? When we pray kind of like this, right? Mumbling, mumble. I'm going to mumble really fast so you think I know the Hebrew really well. Mumble, right? All of those things, they have the same purpose in general. And they are to be aids in our prayer. The idea is if we just say words, that's good. It's good to say the words of the prayer. But we also want to bring those words of the prayer into our souls, into our hearts, into our minds. And sometimes there's a physical action to do that. And so with the Shema, the idea of covering our eyes is so that we can get rid of one of our senses and really, really hear the words that we're saying. Some congregations say, that's a nice tradition. We don't do that here. And that's okay. You know, it's not the tradition in every place, but it's a very, very common tradition, especially in the Orthodox world and the conservative world and a growing part of the Reform world. Shema. And one more thing about Shema. Here at Temple Shalom, we sit for the Shema. Traditionally in the Reform movement, you stand for the Shema. Traditionally in the conservative movement, the Orthodox movement, most but not all of the Reconstructionist movement, you sit for Shema. And in the renewal world, it depends on which synagogue you're at, because they sit, they stand, they dance, they run, they do all kinds of things for the Shema. Traditionally, originally, you stand for the Shema. Because we stood for the Shema and the Ten Commandments recitation on an evening. Anybody know about the Ten Commandments recitation in the evening? Yeah, we don't do that anymore. We stopped about 2,000 years ago. But we would stand up for Shema and the Ten Commandments. And when we stopped doing it in ancient times, we said, well, we'll just sit for the Shema, right? But in the Reform movement, they said, well, we used to stand for the Shema because of its importance. We should stand for the Shema. And they changed the tradition to be to stand for the Shema. So Reform tradition is to stand for the Shema. Conservative and Orthodox and most of Reconstructionist tradition is to sit for the Shema. Renewal tradition is to sit, to stand, to dance, all sorts of other things that happens at various renewal congregations. And in what's called Jewish humanism, they don't say the Shema because they don't believe in God. That's a whole other question, another class on another day. But, so what does that mean for you? That means here at Temple Shalom, since we do things in both the Reform and the conservative tradition, if you stand up for the Shema, you are doing the correct thing. And if you sit for the Shema, you are also doing the correct thing. So whichever one you do, you are right. Isn't it great when both options are correct? I love it when it's that way. So that's what it is about covering the eyes. Another physical aspect of trying to do something physical with our prayer. We'll do one more question.
Relating to this,
Or maybe we'll do two or three really short ones. Go ahead, Judy.
what about the relationship, whether or not the ark is open and covering your eyes?
Whether or not the ark is opening and covering the eyes. So there's different. There's one tradition that says when the ark is open, you shouldn't close your eyes because you need to see the Torah scrolls. There's another tradition that says whenever you say the Shema, you cover your eyes. There's another one that says you only cover your eyes when we say the Shema in the beginning section of the service, but the Shema that's in the Kedusha, you don't cover your eyes for that one. So there's a whole, again, it's one of those, where did you grow up and what was the tradition in the place where you were, because there's a variety of traditions about that. All right, we'll see if we can do two quick ones, one and then two. Remy, you're up. Yeah.
So why are some of the names close to their, their translation and other names?
So in the Amidah, we say Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah. Those names, God of Abraham, God of Isaac, God of Jacob, God of Sarah, God of Rebekah, God of Rachel, God of Leah. Why do some of them sound almost like they do in English and some of them kind of don't? It's just kind of a fluke of language, really. You know, when we translate some things, they sound similar in different languages, right? So Avraham, in Hebrew, a V and a B are the same letter. So Avraham, Abraham, right? Yitzchak, we don't have a ts or a ch in English, so we need to replace those with something, right? So we kind of make changes with those, and sometimes the names sound a little close in one language as they do to another. Sometimes the words get translated into one language and then translated into a third language and then translated into a fourth language before they get to us, right? Jew, what we are, Jewish people, right? It comes from Yehudi, which comes from Yehuda, the tribe of Judah, or the tribe of Yehuda. And Yehuda becomes Judah in German. And then the Y sound in German is actually the letter J. So Juden, Juden in German for Jews. Juden is plural of Jews, but the Y sound is actually the letter J, and then it comes into English with the letter J sounding like J, right? So Judin or Judea or Jew, right? So sometimes names get translated in that way, and you never know when words are going to sound like one thing in one language and one in another. So it's just kind of a fluke of language, right? How do you say pizza in Hebrew? Pizza. That's right. How do you say helicopter in Hebrew? Helicopter. That's right. That's how you say it. How do you say ice cream in Hebrew? Glida, which almost sounds like gelato, sort of, kind of, a little bit. So it's just kind of a fluke of language of why the names do that. All right, one last thing, and then we're going to come to our closing prayers.
It's actually two questions. But
Okay.
one of them is, why is it that men keep their head covered at least in the synagogue, and many all the time, men will always wear a kippah? And then why is it on Shabbat, or Kabalat Shabbat, you wear a prayer shawl but nobody else does?
Okay, so about wearing a kippah and wearing a prayer shawl. Why do we wear a kippah, and the difference between men and women with covering their heads? And we always wear this little kippah to show our constant devotion to God. It's the direct line out of Fiddler on the Roof, right? That's the answer. So that's really what a kippah is about. Kippah, it's a covering. The idea is, as Tevye said, to show our constant devotion to God. What's above the kippah? God. What's below the kippah? Me. I should remember and be humble when I walk out in the world because God is above me, and I should remember, just like the tzitzit on the talit, the tzitzit become a reminder to do the mitzvot. This also becomes a reminder to do mitzvot. Women covering their heads. If you go to an Orthodox synagogue, every woman has her head covered, not with a kippah, with a shawl, with a doily, with a whatever they are, right? With a sheitel, with all kinds of things, right? In the modern liberal Jewish world, you'll see many women who are wearing a kippah. We have women at Temple Shalom who regularly wear a kippah on Friday nights, on Saturday mornings. We have some people who wear a kippah every time they walk in the building, even if they're just coming to drop off their dues check or ask for a printed copy of the bulletin or whatever they're doing here. They wear a kippah when they're in the building. Some people wear a kippah everywhere they go. In Colorado Springs, if you see someone wearing a kippah all the time in Colorado Springs, it's either me or one of the Chabad rabbis, because I don't know anybody else in Colorado Springs who walks around with a kippah on their head all the time. Is there another one?
The fence blockers.
Huh?
Oh, Messianics. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, some of the Messianic non-Jews, which is a weird thing, who I bumped into one the other day, and that was an interesting thing. So that's that. Why do I wear a tallis in the evening when the tradition is you only wear a tallis in the morning, except on two holidays? Yom Kippur and Simchat Torah, the only 2 days that you wear a tallis in the evening. But why do I wear a tallis? Because there is a Sephardic custom that has become prevalent in a lot of the Ashkenazi world now as well, but it started in the Sephardic world of the Shaliach Tzibur, which is the fancy Hebrew name for the person leading the service. Shaliach means ambassador or emissary, and Tzibur means public. So the public emissary, it's a very fancy name for the person leading the service. The Sephardic tradition is whoever's leading the service wears a talit. And so it's become a lot more prevalent in the Ashkenazi world for the Shaliach Tzibur to follow the Sephardic custom of wearing a talit when leading services. So that's why I wear a talit in the evening to lead services. Well, there we go. I hope everybody learned a little something. I learned a little something. I hope you all learned a little something. And we'll see you again for the next fifth Friday of the month, whenever that might be. It's 2 or 3 months from now, I think. And we'll do this again. And you people online, you can email your questions in before the fifth Friday night of the month, and we'll answer some of those questions too. We're going to come to the closing prayers of our service as we turn to page 586, as we rise for Aleinu. Bottom of the page. Aleinu l'shabeach ladon hakol, latet gilula leotzer bereshit, shelo asanu kol goyei ha'aratzot, velo samanu k'mishpachot ha'adama, shelo sam chelkenu kahem, v'gohor aleinu k'chol hamonam, va'anachnu korim, u'mishtachavim u'modim, lifnei melech Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Shehu Notei Shamayim veYoser Haaretz, Umoshav Yikaro Bashamayim Ima'al, Ushchinatu Zo, B'Gofei Meromim, Hu Eloheinu Ein Od, Emet Malkeinu Efesu Lato, Kakatu B'Torato, Yadata Hayom B'Hashivota, Elevahavecha, Ki Adonai Hua Elohim, Bashamayim Ima'al, Ve'al ha'aretz, Mitachat Ein Od, Ki Amalchut Shelcha Hi Olam Yatimloch B'Chavod, Kakatu B'Toratecha, Adonai Yimloch, Leolam Va'ed, V'ne'emar, Vaya Adonai Lemelech, Al Kol Ha'aretz, Bayom Hahu, Ye Adonai Echad, Ushemo Echad, Ushemo Echad. We can all be seated. In our yard sites this week, we recall the memories of Ben Bloom, Goldine Elston, Leo Rubino, Sophie Zamansky, Gertrude Friedman, Janina Dobos, Leon Strick, Rose Hayutin, Sadie Weiss, Ira Perry, Jenny Chase, Leon Kronheim, Nafia Kaklija, Victor Brown, Dorothy Heiser, Madeline Zafrani, Sylvia Weisberg, Helene Schneider, Ida Krohn, Philip Milgram, William Goodman, Babette Freund Silverblatt, Benjamin Wenger, Irving Friend, Sylvia Simon. We also recall all those who have died in the COVID-19 pandemic. We are also in the period of Shloshim for Calvin Waxman, father of Elena Rathman, and Elena and Mark, and I know the rest of the Rathman family and Waxman family are with us this evening online. So we're happy that they're able to be with us and we can support them in saying Kaddish tonight. Are there any other yard sites that anyone is observing? Yehiyu zichronam levracha, may their memories be an eternal blessing. We ask mourners to rise and those whose custom it is to stand with them. As we turn to page 598, and in their memory, we sanctify God's name. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, be'alma divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon uvyomechon uv'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael, ba'agalav v'zman kariv v'yimru amen. Ehei shmei Rabbah mevorach le'olam olmei maya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal shemei d'kudusha b'richu, Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata da'amiran be'elma v'imru amen. Yehei shalama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'imramav huya aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Before we close our service, we have a few announcements. Denny's got some. Yeah, Denny, you've got them right? Denny, I'm going to have you come over to this microphone over here because we rearranged the camera a little bit and the people online can't see anybody standing at that podium until tomorrow morning. So you can use this microphone here. There we go. Yeah.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Thank you all for joining us this Erev Shabbat for our service. If you are new or visiting the Temple Shalom for the first time, Baruch Habayim. Be sure to introduce yourself and let us welcome you. Thank you, Rabbi Sherwood, for leading us in this evening and answering all of our questions. A special toda rabbah to everyone who helped with the service. Even if you didn't see them, somebody helped. On Wednesday, August 10th, Temple member Jane Perry will be representing the Wonders of Jane, featuring laughs, wonders, and illusions at the dine-in version of Senior Lunch. Make your dine-in reservation with Susan Shank, Senior Coordinator, by August 5th, and join us on August 10th, noon to 1 p.m.
You don't have to be a senior to come to that lunch, and it's
No.
the cheapest kosher lunch in town.
And
And the show's really good. I know because I've seen the Wonders of Jane, and the Wonders of Jane are wonderful. So you'll want to be here.
And Susan's a really good chef. Contact information for Susan is in the weekly email. Meet us at, oh, this is exciting. Meet us at Garden of the Gods for Erev Shabbat service on Friday, August 12th. You can join us at 5:30 with your own Shabbat picnic, and then stay for the service at 6:30 p.m. Meet at the Stone Circle area down the path from the main parking lot, also known as P2, and look for Rabbi Jay. It's probably one of my favorite services of the year. Temple Shalom Office and 50th Anniversary Committee are updating our members directory. The online directory will be the source of all printed material for the 50th directory. To see what your information looks like, members can log into templeshalom.com, select my account, and then select View My Directory or Member Directory and look up your entry, and I really suggest you do that. My picture with my husband was actually me with one of my donkeys, and it had his name on there. So fortunately, that was not going to be part of the permanent copy. Glad I looked. For all of you who have signed up for our 50th Anniversary Legacy Ball, the starting time has changed to 6:30 p.m. Ron Ivory and his band will be there. Will you? Sign up if you haven't at templeshalom.com for September 10th, 2022. If you know of any members who are ill, hospitalized, or suffering from a loss, please contact the Temple office so we can be sure to provide encouragement and support. The oneg is provided by Temple Shalom and Robin Gottlieb. If you would like to, and Carolyn Geyser. Sorry, Carolyn, your name was. No, you should be recognized. If you would like to sponsor an oneg for any reason, don't hesitate to call Elena Rathman to arrange it. Shabbat Shalom.
All right. Shabbat Shalom. Please do, if you can make it on September 10th for our 50th anniversary ball, it's going to be amazing. As you heard, Ron Ivory is going to be there. Great Motown cover band. They're probably the best